right, so what I have here is a speed increaser that was sent to me by somebody from our group over there at mygrowthrings.com. And it's going to be going from me on to our buddy Chad, who's going to be doing a little bit of work on it. But what's interesting is how this makes this right angle turn. I knew the guy that invented this, and he took an interesting approach to this. He said his inspiration was actually from an old Toro lawnmower. And as I've dove deep into the patents of both the speed increaser and other devices, I can see that this this idea is not unique to Shopsmith or Toro. And what we have inside of this machine is quite surprising. Let me dig into this package, and I'll be right back with you. Okay, so check out what's going on inside of this machine. Here is the cast iron body. This is what's going to be clamped onto the way tubes using this clamp. But what's transferring the action from the spindle to this spindle is this plastic friction plate. And what can happen over time is that will wear out. This one, in fact, has a bit of a groove in it that was caused by driving against this raised bead right there. And if you push your stock into the bit too quickly and you cause the bit to slow down while this part here is still spinning full speed, you can cause it to melt. You can also, just from wear and tear and buildup of dust, if you're not keeping this thing blown out, that can cause a problem. Now, there's one possible quick solution to this if this is worn out, and that is to flip that plastic disc over. Let me see. Now, the owner of this speed increaser was fortunate to have enough to have an extra disc. And so they've sent that along, and we'll go ahead and swap these out. But my advice would be in the future, when that one does wear out, what they may be able to do is to take this one and flip it over and get a little more use from it. Now, the problem is you don't get as much use from the second side as you do from the first, because there's a cavity directly behind where this has already worn. But that's okay. I'm going to mark this plate so I can get the plate back on exactly the way it came off. It's got some countersinks from the screws. And here you can see that flexible material. Now, in a pinch, I've actually been able to make replacements for these out of the lids of plastic containers. I'm talking like a Tupperware container of some sort. It's a little bit thicker than your disposable plastic lids, but Tupperware containers, you can pick those up at thrift stores and part them out. But you can see, maybe you can see, there is a groove that's been worn here, and if we were to flip it over, we have a fresh surface, but that surface has a cavity underneath it, and so it's going to be more inclined to wear out sooner than a brand new disc. We'll take this new disc. Now, these were sold by Shopsmith, and it's my understanding that they no longer have them. Now, I could be wrong. If you've got a speed increaser, you might want to reach out to Shopsmith now and go ahead and get yourself a spare. And you can see this one, a little bit rough actually. And we'll just put that in place. Line, whoops, we got to line the holes up. Now let me show you something that, while we have this off, what does that look like to you if you own Shopsmith tools? You know, when you look at that, and I have one that is completely out of the speed increaser. Here's one right here. And what does that look like? Yeah, it looks an awful lot like the small Shopsmith face plate. I have a brand new Shopsmith faceplate here. Well, here's one that's out of the package. And you can see how they're slightly different. The faceplate's been machined with a few more holes, and they're through holes where this one has been drilled and tapped. But on the back side, you see they're quite similar, with the major difference being that this one has been balanced. And that's because this is going to be spinning at very high speed. So Shopsmith starts with the casting of this part and produces, for the speed increaser, the part that we need. I think that's kind of cool. Also, inside of this is essentially the water pump bearing assembly that we have on a bunch of the tools, including the main headstock. Anyway, we'll go ahead and align those holes, put the plate back on in the orientation that it came in, and reinstall this. Now, one thing you got to be careful is we want the tension against this bead right here to be just right. If it's too much, it can damage this disc, and if it's not enough, it'll slip, which will damage this disc. So the proper tension is exactly the tension that was on it when you bought it. If we loosen that set screw right there, that bolt that's covered with some putty, and that is what we would have to do if we needed to change the idler bearing that's inside of here. If we did that, that would cause that to shift, and that would completely change the orientation. So let's say that I had to replace my idler bearing assembly, and I had no choice. I need to go ahead and reposition this. Well, the right position is, if I had a straight edge here, is straight across this casting, holding a straight edge. That is where the plate needs to be. So that face plate needs to be the thickness of that friction disc below the surface of this straight edge. I believe it's called out in the instructions. We can take a look in the instructions to see if that is the case or not. And there we go. Now we need to reassemble this and get all the correct bolts and washers in the right spots. The body of this is drilled and tapped, so all we need here is our machine screw and a lock washer. And we can begin the process of bolting this together. And I've already messed up because we have something of a guard that helps to cover this this raised bead, and that attaches to the bolt that we pass through here. So we're going to pass our bolt through. This is a longer bolt. The last time I pulled one of these apart was back in probably the mid to late 1990s. So it has been a while, but it is a little bit like falling off a bicycle, I guess. Once we tighten these 4 bolts here, we should have the appropriate torque. It's a slightly larger hex wrench. That should give us the appropriate tension between that bead and that friction disc. All right, now we take this shield, and that's going to be held in place again with a nut and a lock washer. This just needs to be snug enough to flatten out that lock washer. Then we have this little cover that helps to cover up. Well, really part of the reason it's there is in case you accidentally leave those set screws loose, you won't have the set screws flying out. But it is also there to help to keep dust from building up around those set screws, which could make it impossible to get router bits out of there. These are being held on with just button head cap screws. I don't know if this happens to you, but guaranteed every single time I reach in and grab a hex wrench, I will absolutely grab the wrong size. I'll grab one size smaller than I need every single time. There we go. So that's a speed increaser fully assembled. Here's the drive hub that's inside of this, which you can see is a plastic coupling that's been formed around another hub. It's got a flat on it that we can access through the bottom, and that aligns with a flat on that water pump bearing assembly. We should be able to drop that in. And that should lock right in place. This was loaned to me by James, and he happens to have a shaper arbor that's a little bit nicer than mine. This was something that was an option that I didn't take them up on, and I wish I had. You can see right off the bat that this particular rub collar, and rub collars are used with shaper cutters in much the same way as a ball bearing that's on the tip of a router bit is used. When we're freehand routing or shaping, or if we're shaping to a template, we use these rub collars. But what's different here than mine is that James has got ball bearings, and you can see that even down inside of these sleeves, they have ball bearings, these different diameter rub collars. I wish I'd have picked this up. This is something that does show up from time to time on eBay. I need to grab one of these the next time I see it. And then we'll talk about this when we get around to shaping. But one absolutely critical thing with the shaper arbor is you want to be sure you're using a tongued washer, and that your shaper arbor have a keyway cut down the length of it that allows you to put that tongued washer on there. This is really important if you happen to have either version of the Mark VII, either the 1960s Mark VII or the modern Mark VII that Shopsmith has in production today, because the Mark VII can be run in reverse. And when you do run it in reverse, your cutters are spinning in the direction or being pushed in the direction that could possibly loosen the nut. So by having that keyed or tongued washer in there, it prevents the washer from transferring that rotational force against the nut. A very critical feature. Don't ever run a shaper without that tongued washer in place between the cutters or the bearings and the nut. So in upcoming videos, we'll talk about using this machine for routing and shaping without a speed increaser as well as with, and we'll see some more examples of that. I look forward to your questions, comments, and cheap shots, and in the meantime, make it a great week.